Anthony Melchiori, we're back at the home offices today. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Great. I feel like I should beat you and say Happy Friday.
No, Steve, you screwed it up. Happy Tuesday.
All right.
I'm Anthony. Welcome to No Vacancy Live. That's my friend Glenn.
You're watching the #1 show in hospitality.
My head was still shaking from the music.
Yeah, man, that stuff is really catching. I love that new open. I gotta tell you, Anthony.
So yesterday we were at the Garden City Hotel, and so thank you to Grady and his team.
Speaking of the Garden City Hotel, there we are.
So for those of the people listening to on podcast, he's showing a picture of the Garden City Hotel behind him. Beautiful hotel. And what I really was interesting to me about the Garden City Hotel yesterday was they're doing a good job of maintaining it and keeping it open. And you see for leisure guests, you know, they closed breakfast at 10:30 and didn't have food and beverage the rest of the day, but they had room service. And so you could see it still feel like the Garden City. It felt clean. It felt fresh. Didn't feel like it was in mothballs. And they're just, you know, they're just bouncing along until we get past this, and they're keeping that thing alive. And it's like, you know, it's like a patient that can't leave the hospital yet, but just needs to kind of just rest a little bit. But if they rest right and they take care of themselves, when they leave the hospital, they'll be in good shape. And so it didn't feel as obviously as vibrant as it usually does because there wasn't as many people. But it was really nice to see that the hotel was open and that Grady and his team are doing everything in their power to keep the lights on, so to speak. And so when we're out of there, Garden City doesn't lose an iconic hotel.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, they did a great job taking care of us yesterday, and they even gave us a great breakfast. Well, we paid for it, but we had an awesome breakfast over there.
Yeah, but we were a little bit. I was a little bit me yesterday in the sense of breakfast was closed. Breakfast was closed, and Glenn, who's a really nice guy, and David, our producer, is a really nice guy. It isn't going to push a little bit, so I asked,
like,
okay, it's closed.
Right. And I said, hey, do you mind? I asked the front desk agent if she can ask them to open it. And of course, Garden City being a first-class hotel said absolutely. And they opened it and served us a great breakfast. So truly, truly appreciate them doing it. And you don't get anything you don't ask for, or you get everything you don't ask for.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I learned that lesson early on. The worst people can say is no. And once I learned that, Anthony.
No, the worst thing he says, no, you're an asshole under their breath, but whatever.
Yeah, but I don't have good hearing anymore, so it doesn't really matter. I just get the shake of the head. Well, maybe when they give me that finger, then I could know what they're talking about. But the fact of the matter is, in our careers, it's always good to ask for stuff, because if you ask, at least you can start moving forward. I spent too many times sitting on the sideline not asking for the yes from people. And I think it probably hurt me with being able to advance in my career or getting that advertising deal or that speaking engagement. But I'm really glad that I got rid of that.
Yeah, I'm going through that with one of my children right now. She's graduating college, and it's like it's time to kick in a couple doors. Yeah. So today is a conversation that I'm really looking forward to, and it's a subject right up my alley and speaks to my heart.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to be talking human resources, engaging your staff, and all that kind of good stuff with Dr. Ryan Giffen. Let's bring him in right now. Whoop, I forgot to hit the button to bring him in. Boom, there he is.
Oh gosh.
Hey. Oh, yeah.
I'm in.
Yeah, dude, you know, we decided that maybe this wasn't going to work out, but I didn't have the guts to tell you that in person. But now that you're here, what the hell? Let's have you stick on board. So for those of you who are not familiar with Dr. Ryan Giffen out there, he's the assistant professor of hospitality management. He's also hosts the MOD Report, a podcast out there. He's a founder of InnoSpire. But what I love is that you're an expert in human relations and business culture, which I think we need a little bit more of these days.
Yeah, no doubt. You know, I think particularly with since COVID, you know, working from home and the furloughs and the layoffs and everything that's been happening within our industry, no doubt about it. It's leadership really is going to have to start stepping up and really understand what it means to have strong cultures within the organizations and with the people.
All right. So, Anthony, I know Anthony's going to talk a lot, but let me get him one question here. How, as an executive, do you know if your culture is good or it's real stinky? Because a lot of people at the top may think they got it all figured out when they actually don't.
That's an interesting question, because prior to COVID, we would say, oh, let's look at some HR analytics, such as turnover factors and retention levels and satisfaction, like guest satisfaction scores and whatnot. And I think, prior it was easier to do that. Now it might be a little more challenging in the sense of, does the turnover that's really occurring correlate to a poor culture? So there's a lot of research out there outside of my own that has been done in hotels and restaurants in particular, out of the University of Houston. I know Cornell has some research out there in that area, and UNLV. And then, of course, Iowa State, my alma mater. But what we have found that when it comes to organizational culture, we look at multiple facets within hospitality. You can look at the employee uniforms, the way that they greet the guests. We can observe how they engage with other people, and we can get a sense of all of the touchy-feely emotions. That's part of it, yes, but also the actual observations that we make with these employees and how they engage with management, and how management or leaders, in that sense, engage with their people through observation. The fancy academic term for that would be qualitative research or qualitative analytics.
Yeah. So one of the things, I want to bring up your biography one more time. I want to put that on the screen, and I want to talk through it a little bit, because one of the things that I admire about you is that you got a PhD in hospitality. On the other hand, as an operator, I don't like people that have PhDs that have operation experience. It bothers me. You have operations experience, and so that makes you perfectly suited to have this conversation, because you understand the pain. Not just an academic that understands theory, but understands that you cry in hallways, you argue with unions, you get along with unions, you fight with your staff sometimes in a positive way. You have that stress. So can we put that back up again, please? I want to talk through it. So basically, you led the ops. Just leave it up for a minute. You led the ops and HR departments for Kipton Hotels and Marriott International. Tell me a couple of the operational management positions
that I've held within those organizations.
Yes.
Yeah. So, if I may, can I just back up to my very earlier experience? Because when we
Sure.
talk
So when you were born, what hospital did you come out of? Oh, not that early?
Kaiser Permanente in Fontana, California. Would you like the coordinates?
I have them already.
No, but listen, in high school, actually, in my high school, my senior year, my very first job was working in the cafeteria, 5th period, and getting paid $5.25 a day for it, for 1 hour of work. That was my very first job, and that's when I really started learning about food service and what that meant.
First of all, you're a show off, because my first job was $3.35 an hour.
Well, let's not talk about age. I don't know if it's a show off thing or if it's an age differential with minimum wage standards. But listen, at the end of the day, what I've worked for Denny's restaurants and Chili's, being a food server. You're not going to see that on my LinkedIn page, but there's that prior experience in there that led me into hospitality, where my first job was at the Courtyard Marriott in Buena Park as a front desk agent. And all of that experience between food service and working with the general public provided that experience for me to get that front desk job. So make a long story short of my career, I started in operations, and then I went into sales as a sales manager for Marriott, and then found myself going back into operations as a guest services manager, overseeing the front desk, restaurant, and housekeeping, and found my way into human resources by a stroke of luck, in a sense. I always talk about, it's always important to have a strong network. It's all about who you know, and that the best job that's out there is the one that's not advertised. And that's exactly what happened with me in my first role as a director of human resources for Market Broiler Restaurants, a local California 700 employee seafood chain. But from there, I worked at Aris Hotels, and then we went into Kimpton, where I held an area manager of human resources position, and just have always found myself staying within the HR realm of things, because I really, really loved the idea of combining business law. Business is in terms of operations and making money, and then my passion for political science and politics and law and training and development and teaching. And so all that came together with HR. But to answer your question or to agree with you, Anthony, that's exactly it. I even teach that with my students. It's if I did not have experience working in the dish pit at the restaurant at Marriott and working in housekeeping and cleaning those guest rooms shortly after 9/11 when we had to furlough and lay off a bunch of folks, I rised up to the challenge and I got in there, got my hands dirty and was there. And you earn that respect. And I can't emphasize that enough. And I think through those positions, that is what has really helped propel me forward and being able to relate to others today, particularly as a leader in those positions.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, and I'm glad that I asked you that question because there's nothing worse than talking to an academic that doesn't really understand the pain. So with that said, the thing that bothers me, and by the way, gentlemen, not to show off, but I was making $1 a day at the Palm Shores Club back in Brooklyn, opening and closing cabanas until somebody told me that guy's taking advantage of you, the cabana boy's taking advantage of you. And I was like, yeah, but he gave me a job and an opportunity to show him I'm the best assistant in Palm Shores Club. And I made $1 a day for literally 2 summers. So anyway, and I was stupid enough to not realize that. So that was a bad decision.
So we learned Anthony's not good at math.
But I guarantee you that lesson taught me was you can only be taken advantage of when you know you're being taken advantage of, right? So, or you're not being taken advantage of when you know you've been. So I didn't know I was being taken advantage of at that moment. Yeah. Once they told me and I continued my job, I was like, now we're square because I know he's taking advantage of me, but I still like getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and opening and closing the cabanas. It gives me a sense of purpose. So he's using me, I'm using him. It's working out. So if you know you're being taken advantage of, are you being taken advantage of? And the answer is no, because you have choices. Sometimes you don't, but most of the time you do. So this is where the rubber hits the road with me in management in the hospitality industry. I grew up in an industry, boutique hotels, working directly for owners. I was very lucky to meet a guy that gave me an opportunity that no one else was going to give me and made me a general manager at 29 years old. And then he got out of my way and just watched me really closely, made sure I didn't steal his money and I didn't do anything wrong. And through that, he allowed me to break the eggs and make a lot of mistakes. However, I had common sense and I had a passion for taking care of employees and taking care of the guest. Along the way, what I've noticed is ownership, controlling general managers that control employees that make everybody miserable. And there's 3 types of general managers. General manager that got their job because they work in a boutique hotel and they work at the front desk and they were really, really nice and they showed up on time and they worked the extra day and they worked night audit and they did everything I asked them to do. So I'm going to make him general manager in charge of a $50 million building because he's a nice guy. That person usually gets stepped on and broken. Number 2, you have the guy that is kind of like me where it's like, I don't know that much in the beginning. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to work with my team and I'm going to communicate and I'm going to get myself in a lot of trouble by, asking for forgiveness, not for permission. And then you have the corporate Marriott Hilton manager who's articulate, who's smart for the most part, and who's worked their way up job to job, like 4 seasons. You need to be in the 4 seasons, I think 37,000 years before you become general manager, and you work, your way up and you become a true hospitality expert and you really understand how to write the manual, how to write a mission statement, how to deal with your guests, what the standards of service are, and you really are formalized into the role. I tend to like the people the way I grew up. Is I don't have a manual. I'm going to write the manual. Matter of fact, I have my manual right there that I just wrote. And that to me, it's not right or wrong, but I guess the wrong part of that is the people that get promoted because they show up on time and they're nice. Have you seen that? And what do you think about that?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think it goes back to my old adage that I just said. It's about who you know. And that's not always a good thing. I think we have all seen people get promoted in positions because their dad knows someone who is the ownership or whatever. Right. And what we find, and this is no surprise to anyone, I don't think, what we find is that person ends up annihilating the culture. And you have terrible turnover. You have terrible guest satisfaction surveys. The repeat customer is no longer coming back, or the repeat guests, and they're going to your competition across the street. So listen, I think there are some great folks out there, Anthony, like yourself, who recognize, because you have worked for someone who took a risk with you. They mentored you. They let you break the eggs, as you say, and make those mistakes, but you learn from them and you grow from them. And as long as you continue to improve and you're not malicious about it, I don't see why, you would be penalized for it, but other than continue to grow within your career. And you recognize that. You've been there, done that, and now you have that mentality to do that with your employees. And it continues to pass on from hopefully generation to generation.
One of the things that I said right before we got on air was, my style of leadership is, you're going to love me or you're going to hate me. You're not going to like me, and you're not going to say he's okay. You're either going to love me and say I can't work with anybody else, or you're going to despise the side of me. And I'll tell you why. If you work on my team, work on our team for 6 months, you'll work on my team probably for a long time. If you don't make 6 months, that means you couldn't make it through. And it's kind of like when you go into and anybody that's ever worked with me on hopefully you're listening, you can please get on the conversation and explain what I mean. If it's like going to the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, the Marines. There are regular people that do a really good job in the Navy, Army, Air Force, Marines. And then there's the Green Beret. Right. And I've always been the guy that's taken over a hotel that has been really difficult. I'm not a Green Beret, but I need to surround myself with Green Berets or I'm going to get shot. So I'm smart enough to know I'm not built to be a Green Beret, but I want to hang out with them. But if you're not confident enough to be around people, like you said, and I love what you said, annihilate the environment. And that's what they do. What I do is I'm smart enough to annihilate the environment as soon as I walk in, whatever negative energy is there, annihilate that by bringing in Green Berets and, special ops that are crazy or as intense or as passionate as me, and then get out of the way. But the secret to that is having an owner, the people that own the property, which is I cannot say this strong enough, that allows you to do that. And that doesn't mean like you said, he mentored me. He didn't mentor me. He told me sink or swim. I sign my own checks, and don't waste my money or I'll break your neck. And that's all. That was the mentorship. Okay, And I remember there was the first time I stood up. It was after 9/11, and he wanted the housekeepers to stay, and I was like, no, the housekeepers have to leave because most of them live up in Harlem. And they live on the island. And their kids have to come home from school or whatever it was. And he goes, no, the housekeepers, we need to keep them because we have to clean rooms. So we're not cleaning rooms. We're giving towels and they're going home. And I walked away and I still had a job the next morning. I was like, I was willing to lose my job. And that's not the only conversation I had where I almost lost my job, probably 100 times. But I knew enough that is where my Green Berets have my back. They have my back because if I made them stay there while they're 9/11's happening, their kids, they don't know where their kids are. They would have never had my back when I needed them. Yeah. And to me, I want everybody that works in a corporate environment to have one or two experiences like that. Work in an environment where there's no book.
Well, Anthony, where do you get the guts to do something like that, though? Because there's a lot of risk for taking a position that you believe is antithetical to what your boss wants done.
You know what? I'm going to give you an example of something that just happened to me right here, right now. I'm looking at your lighting. Your lighting is really, really good. And my lighting has always not been great. And because of where I am in my house, in order for me to do it, because everybody's home, I have to set up all my lighting every day. And I don't want to.
Right.
I just don't.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to spend a half hour of my life setting up lighting every day. So I've made a decision. I'm not doing it. So any decision I've made in the environment of a hotel, I make a decision. I don't care if I get fired. I don't care if my boss is mad at me, but I have to go to sleep at night. And I know if I spend a half hour, an hour every single day setting up my room every single day with lighting, I have natural lighting. And if I have to really control the lighting, I am going to have to take away my routine in the morning, whether it be doing all my emails, whether it be working out, whatever, having my breakfast, and I'm not willing to do it. So when you're not willing to do something, you have to tell yourself, what are you getting from it? This show is built on our guest, built on what our conversation is and people learning. It's not built on my lighting. And yes, I would love that perfect lighting, and I will one day, but I am not willing to do stuff that annoys me. And that is something that I've been really able to figure out during my career. So why don't we see, like, I have a lot of people that I know, the Larry Brontons of the world and the Jerry Inzarellas of the world and Horst Schultzes of the world, and so many, I can just keep naming them, that are mavericks and that do push the limits. Why in the industry do we get yes men and women? We get more of that than less of that. And that's why I think a lot of these hotels, I've never seen a hotel go out of business because of an employee. I've only seen the business go out of business because the general manager can't stand up to the owner, and the owner doesn't understand how to run a hotel. Now I'm going to shut up and let you actually be the guest.
I have so many comments. I know. Yeah. So many great points. And I kind of see like some Facebook things popping up here and some great feedback and some agreement. But I think the true test of great leadership, Anthony, is this question. The people that work for me, and I hate saying work for me, but the people I work with.
I'd say work with.
Exactly. Will they follow me? Should I move on to my next hotel or to my next venture? Do they follow me? And you've seen this. We've all seen this in the industry, that some of the great general managers, when they took another position, either with the sister company or even the same company, and they were promoted or went to the competitor, followers, the employees at that hotel followed them to the next property. They were headhunted, essentially. And I think that's a really great test of great leadership is, are you going to go into battle with that leader voluntarily? Not out of submission, but voluntarily go with them. So I think that's important. But I think also talking about personal core values and alignment with company core values is where your question of why general managers don't stand up to ownership may be the issue, possibly because of fear. I think fear is a big part of it. There's a fear of many things, of losing my job, especially today. I don't think people are willing to take a risk today as much as they were prior to this, when they were empowered, when the job market was truly an employee-friendly market, but now it's swung all the way back to the employer-friendly market. But I think talking about and understanding what your personal core values are as a person, as an employee, in alignment with the core values of a company you want to work for. And I'm only speaking from my own experience here, not from research and all the other nerdy stuff, but I'm talking about when I transitioned from Marriott to Kimpton, I really felt that my personal core values was more in alignment at the time with Kimpton Hotels, with this culture of care and a culture of empowerment, and not by the book. There was no standard operating procedure. There was no 3-ring binder I could pick up and say, what is the protocol for checking in a guest? Now at Marriott, we had that. Not at Kimpton. You write your own story. You write your own book. You relate to the guest how you feel as the employee you should relate to the guest, Right.
And I love that. And one of the things I want to back up to, you said something very important. You said you can write your own ticket pre-COVID. Now you can't take those challenges. And when people make a mistake with me is, and a lot of people, it's like, oh my God, he's so brave. No, I'm not. I'm a scaredy cat, but I have a plan. So one of the things right now, you don't have control. So you may have to stick it out a year more than you wanted to stick it out because you need to pay your mortgage. So I would do that. However, what is your plan of escape?
Yeah.
First of all, how are you going to mentally take care of yourself for that year? What are you going to do to wake up in the morning and feel good about your position? I was in a position for 2 years and I hated it from the first day to the last day. And it was the greatest experience of my life. And what I did, because I learned more from that position than any other position in my career, but I will never, ever do that again. But one of the things I learned about myself was patience. And I became a yes man. And I showed up and I did my job. And I I was punching way above my weight, if you understand what that means.
Mhm.
But I was like, you know what? You got to knock me out. And I'm not going down. I'm going to do it. And I convinced myself that I needed to stay there for as long as I can tolerate it or they can tolerate me.
Yeah.
And then I made my escape plan. And my escape plan was my TV show. It gave me 2 years to hate it so much that I wanted to change my life entirely. I saved more money because I was making a lot of money. So I saved a lot of money. I spoke to my family and I hatched my escape plan. And that's what people make mistakes. Do not be a scaredy cat. Cross all the T's and dot all the I's. I'm a 70. 70% of the information, I make my decision. I don't make it on 100 and I don't make it less than that. Colin Powell said that. General Powell said, if you make it on a 70%, you're usually making a right decision, but sometimes we make mistakes. And to me, I didn't want that to escape me because I know what you mean is that you gotta suck it up, but that doesn't mean be in pain.
Yeah.
Right? What do you think?
Totally. Think about all of the people that have come into your life, whether they're teachers, professors, or bosses. We've all had bad bosses. We've all had terrible teachers and professors where we had to stick it out. We could come up with a plan and get out of there. But if you really challenge yourself and think about it, think about all of the good things you learned about that bad boss that is now making you a great boss because you don't want to be like them because of what you had to go through and you don't want to put that onto your employees. And so I think taking it from that standpoint, I'll sometimes get students who come to me and they're like, oh, this professor, they're terrible. You're so great, Dr. Giffen, da, 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 da. And it's like, okay, thank you, first of all, but let's back up because this isn't going to be the last time in your experience and in your life that you're going to have to deal with someone for a long period of time who is authoritative, who is autocratic, who is so assertive that they will run you over with a snowplow. But you can learn from that person. As crazy as that sounds and as difficult as that may be in the moment, we can learn from them and become a better person because of it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And one of the things that I try to do is the year before I decided to start my business, I was in a position that I was very unhappy with. Getting out of bed every day was a chore for me. So the thing that I did, guys, was I visualized what my experience would be like once I got out there. And that gave me the strength in order to get through. But there were still a lot of chances to learn, no matter how bad the environment was. If I spent a lot of my career learning how not to do things, which really informed me on how to do things.
And it also great point. It also allows you to have a chemistry experiment. I'll give you an example. There were a couple of times where I was in this environment and I pushed the bear and I poked him. I was poking the bear and I got my finger chopped off. And I was like, oh, that sucked. Won't do that again. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. Then maybe 6 months later, I got comfortable again and I poked him again. And then 2 fingers got chopped off. And I was like, oh, all right. So now I've got to hatch my escape plan. Okay. Kind of like your cat just did, Glenn.
Yeah, that's what her.
So, I had to hatch my escape plan, but I push. And John said in our comments is, it says rather than prescribed behaviors, just hire people whose personal values match the corporate values, then all employees need to be themselves. The answer is yes, but the important part of that question that just went away again,
I can bring it back up,
is then the employees need to be themselves. Okay. Just because my values and your values in a corporate structure align doesn't mean the boss has thick skin and doesn't mean that the boss knows how to manage you. We can have the same values and want the same things, but my insecurities and my inability to manage myself is not letting you be who you are. So it's not enough to have the same core values. You've got to kind of push sometimes. And one of the things, if you're with that professor that's being negative or that boss that's being negative, 99% of the time, the only time I got my fingers chopped off was that one environment. 99% of the time when I poked the bear in a very respectful, direct, nice way, I got my way. And not only I got my way, their behavior changed towards me. People will take advantage of the people they can take advantage of. Period. End of story. When people say to me, they give me all the work. I'm always working the most. I'm like, oh, congratulations. You're going to be a general manager. Because you're the one who's respectfully getting it done. So there's a nuance to building your career in this environment. It's being respectful, formal, and nice, and it's also being a pain in the ass. But a pain in the ass, no, dude, I'm the biggest pain in the ass ever. Every boss I've ever had, I apologize for me, because I did everything they asked me to do and more with my teams. But I was a pain in the ass, and I have references that basically said that. I think I told you this at the Algonquin Hotel. I opened my file, and every one of my references, including David Weidlich, if you're listening, David, I appreciate you, but that wasn't nice. He said, if you're ready to deal with Anthony, he will get the job done. But he's a lot. And every one of my references said that. So
I wish I saw some of those references before we started working together.
So you can push, but you got to get the job done. So if you're annoying and a pain in the ass and don't get the job done, then you're just a pain in the ass.
Right. That's the most unforgivable thing.
Right.
And how do you treat people through this process? Because I hope it is through dignity and respect. And what I mean by that, and this is my core of my HR human resource philosophy, is that as long as we treat people with the dignity and respect that they deserve as a human being, you could still be a jackass to some limit, but at the end of the day, they will respect you, right? Because you're giving it to them. And I know this might sound crazy, but it has been done, and I have seen it done effectively with some great leadership that has had some great mentoring. And that is when you lay off someone, or you have to terminate someone, or you got to coach and counsel and document someone because of their behavior or a violation of a corporate policy or whatever it may be. You can do that in a manner that when they walk out of that room, they can still put their shoulders back and still feel good about themselves. And this is the core. And if you want, we can get into this, but this is the core of my research, which is known as relationship awareness theory, RAT for short. But what relationship awareness theory teaches us is that we feel good about ourselves when things are going well. When things are going well in our lives, that's when I feel good about myself. So as a leader, as someone who has to document or who has to document a coaching counseling session and put that in your file, or a termination or whatnot, I could still do it in a manner that still dignifies you, respects you, and allows you to walk out of that room with your head held high, and hopefully the next day wake up and say, they were right. This termination was probably the right thing for me. And because of it, I'm going to grow, learn, and get even a better job one day.
Yeah. There's a word that I remember somebody posting. It was the word of the day is authentic. And authentic became the word in the last couple of years. Everybody said, we got to be more authentic. And it pisses me off. It just straight up pisses me off. So for 53 years, you were being inauthentic. I'm 55. So was I I wasn't authentic for 53 years? It's like now we're just now becoming aware that authenticity is what people want. Transparency is what people want. Like it really angers me. Like if somebody says, we've got to really be authentic and transparent. That's our culture. Like did you just wake up and somebody you saw that on a bumper sticker somewhere? It's like it really, I can't tell you how upsetting. So you've been living your life at the beat of somebody else's rules, the beat of somebody else's drum. You must be a really, really, and again, and there's nuance, right, Doc? So when I say you got to make choices, you got to make decisions, you got to push the bear, you've got to be authentic, but there's discipline. Right? There's discipline in that. That doesn't mean I am not a lunatic. Right. There are moments when I look like one, but when I look like one, what happens? And I'll give you the perfect example. When I was running the Algonquin Hotel, I had Green Berets around me. So I had the best of the best around me. It took me 6 months to get them. And once I got them and they say, boss, you're safe, without saying it, I was nuts. Mm-hmm. And they were like, pat me on the little head and goes, that's just him. But with you're around people that don't let you be that person you're meant to be, then you're made fun of. Then you're I got tears in my eyes because then you're made fun of. Then you're that kid that nobody respects. When you got your people, your family on these teams, and when you're running a hotel, we're going to build a hotel in Los Angeles, and I'm putting my team together right now, actually in Long Beach, and I'm putting the team together in my head. Last night, I was literally so excited. A meeting that I'm gonna have in a couple of weeks, because I'm pulling this guy, I'm pulling this girl, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm building like the A team again. And I got so excited about that, because once I'm in there and they realized I'm the dumbest person in the room, they have my back. And that's how you build a team. If you're the smartest person in the room, your team will eat you up eventually, because they'll know that you're trying to take all their power. And even if you are the smartest person in the room, you can't take all the power. You've got to give it to your team. And so, like, if you ask me, one of the things that I love more than anything on being on planet Earth is building teams. And unfortunately, and that's one of the reasons in the beginning when I didn't realize I was going to be on the show today, is, I'll be honest with you, if you didn't have the credentials, I probably would have tapped out already and wouldn't have had all these questions and be motivated. To know that you can back up what I'm saying based on statistics and education, because I don't have the education that you have in this field, but I felt it, and you can understand that.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
So,
yeah.
Doctor, I want you to respond to his authenticity thing, but I want to add another layer to that. Anthony, I think, is a specially unique person who's been in business for a lot of years, so he's allowed to be his authentic self. I think when you're younger, not only are you uncomfortable with who your authentic self might be, you may not even realize who you are authentically, but further than that, you may want to put on the suit of somebody else to create a character of that person you think you should be. So a lot of this internal dialogue, I think, is happening that may not be coming from the top down, but it's just how we've been trained in school and in society, that we have to conform to whatever it is. So how do you bring together what that person might be feeling that's insecure and therefore is unable to be authentic, with Anthony's very good point that you must be that way. You should have always been that way.
Yeah. First and foremost, when you're in Long Beach, Anthony, you better hit me up. I'm right in downtown Long Beach. So,
all right.
Listen, at the end of the day, I think when it comes to being your authentic self, in fact, let me share a very personal story.
Sure.
Where I struggled with this with Marriott International back in the early 2000s. In the early 2000s, Bill Marriott was still at the helm, and everything is peachy keen and everything. But, as a gay closeted male going to a private Christian university, I cannot be my authentic self, not only at school, but not even at work.
Oy. And
not even with my friends. It's at that time, 20 years ago, we have come a long way.
Very different environment. Yeah.
Yeah, a long way in 20 years. But I couldn't be my authentic self. And I couldn't be my authentic self until I graduated from this university in 2002, realizing now I am free. I got my degree and they can't take it away. They can't expel me, all this other stuff. And then that's when the very first person I came out to, the very first person, was my general manager at the hotel that I first worked at, Mitch Healy.
And
he
what
was
happened?
The first person I told. Well,
and what happened?
Well, he's gay. He was out and proud, and at the hotel, and I looked up to him in that sense, and he mentored me in the sense that he knew that I was gay, but I just wasn't sharing it, and I wasn't ready to admit it. But it literally happened like a week after graduation, and when I sat down with him during a lunch break in the break room at the hotel, I told him, it's like, my mom is coming, for graduation, and I got to tell her. And he mentored me through that process. Make a long story short, if it wasn't for him and the support that I had from him, not from corporate, because corporate, being from an LDS Mormon foundation, that's where I struggled a little bit, is, can I get fired for this? I didn't know about California laws, employment laws at the time, and as a young kid. So
why would you at 20 years old, right?
Yeah. I was trying to graduate. But it was so hard for me to be authentic. And so that's when I found, when I went to Kimpton Hotels, what I really loved about their core value system is it's very simple. Stay true to you. That was in their statement. Stay true to you. That was who they were. And they didn't care as long as it was done in good taste. If you had tattoos coming up your neck, they wanted to hire you as a bartender. Marriott at the time, not so much. No tattoos whatsoever. Cover them up. And when we talk about authenticity, you're telling me that even if I want to go work for a Marriott property or any of them, and I'm not ragging on Marriott, it's just where the bulk of my experience is, but any property that's out there, it can be very difficult for that individual, gay, straight, bi, it doesn't matter. And I think about what's been happening recently, with the Black Lives Movement and everything that's happening there. And you really have to understand who's really living up to their true authentic self and hiding who they really are. Because I think if we allow an environment in which people can truly flourish, your profitability at the end of the day, your profitability, your bottom line is going to continue to increase quarter over quarter, no doubt about it, because people are free to do and be who they are with the support of everyone around them. And we know, once again, through relationship awareness theory, when we feel good about ourselves, we are feeling so good that we are willing to do anything and everything to take care of my boss, to take care of my colleague, to take care of the owner, to take care of the guest, and they'll keep coming back. It's very, very basic stuff, folks. I don't know why sometimes we overcomplicate it. Just be a good person and let people be who they want to be. And obviously within the confines of the law, don't be breaking the law.
Right, of course.
But be your authentic self.
When you say it's not complicated, and that is such an oxymoron, because it's not complicated.
We're dealing with humans. That's what makes it
complicated. Things are so not complicated.
Yeah.
Because you're dealing with humans, right? So when you say it's not complicated, when you have that environment and you're a good boss and you allow people to be who they are, right? Then because you're a good boss, this is where I find most managers, whether in or out of the hotel business, fail.
Yeah.
Is not letting people be who they are, not being appreciative and respectful of people. It's squaring up on the person that's bringing the team down. And if I had any superpower in my career, is I enjoy that confrontation more than anyone alive, because I know I'm going to be kind. I'm going to be very, very well prepared. I'm going to be very articulate in why this isn't working. And I'm going to take care of that person. I'm going to give them a soft blow and let them know it's like, I like you and you're a good person, but you have to understand there's a mission. And the mission is bigger than all of us. And unfortunately, you can't find that here, but there are places for you to exist. It's just not on this team. But, no harm, no foul. I got your back. How can I help you? When you speak to people that way, you are protecting your team and your mission and the owners, and you're protecting them. Way too many times we're trying to be nice. If someone thinks I'm an asshole because I just had that conversation with them, then I am, because I didn't do it right. Never once has anybody walked out of my office, like you said before, ever once in a conversation that went that way and said I was not a good person. And maybe at that moment they didn't feel it. Maybe they cried. Maybe they went home. I cried probably before I went into the room to tell them. But there is nothing I wouldn't do to save my mission and my team. And if you were my brother, my mother, my grandmother, whoever you are, I'll fire you if you are not on the team. And like you said, if I put my son or my daughter in charge of my hotel because they're capable, and they're not capable, they're done. And that to me is the lack. I think what we're the one thing that I find over and over again. We can be kind and nice, but we don't know how to have the tough conversations.
Conflict avoidance.
Okay, so explain.
That's
Explain
exactly it.
How explain you overcome that?
Well, first, I think one of the big problems we have is here we go. This phone, this thing right here. It's all about or just social media. Let's just call it social media, the Facebook, the Instagrams, all that fun stuff. I want to be liked. I want everyone to love me. How many likes can I get if I post this? How many people are going to comment on this? And let me do a selfie. Not enough likes. Oh, I'm going to delete it, redo it. It's all about perception of myself and who is going to like me. And so if I have to confront an employee and document or do a coaching, counseling, etc., there are people out there in management that are terrified because the employee is not going to see me as a good person anymore. For whatever reason, we got to get that out of their head, because as to my point earlier, you can hold people accountable still. You can hold people accountable and they will still love you. In fact, research has shown that everybody, students, you, Anthony, Glenn, myself, we all want to be held accountable at the end of the day. We want to have a set of goals. And if I'm not meeting those standards to hit those goals, I would love to be held accountable for it, whether that's my fitness regimen, my writing regimen, research, whatever it is. We want that. We want that accountability. But for some reason, there's this lack of accountability that has come. And I think it is because, I'm just theorizing here, don't quote me on this, I have not researched this, but I really think the world of social media and how we want to be portrayed by the outside world, with how many friends I have on my Facebook link or on my Facebook page, because I have 2,500 friends, that somehow brings value to me. That makes me a great person. And I get all of these likes and all of it. And now as the manager, I don't want to have to discipline you because I'm not going to get a like from you at the end of the day.
But let's look at that, right? Let's look at that. The world has been around for a long time, right?
Yeah.
So yes, I believe social media is demise of interactions and people reading and I think that's why podcasts work, because people are hungry for long form content.
Yeah.
And because we're getting it in snippets and headlines. So I would be, it's not a true statement to say that's not affecting that. However, way before iPhones and social media, people had an inability to stand their ground and talk about what was important and confront people. Way before, I think it really ostracizes other problems, but I don't think that that's the reason. I think that people in their home, on their baseball team, on their honors program, got away with crap. And when you get away with crap, that's what happens. So my kids have social media, but they know they're accountable. Okay. And I think that social media and iPhones is just a scapegoat for people not having the tools. So because of that, before iPhones, I've seen a lot of bad. Matter of fact, I might have seen more bad managers before the iPhone than I did now, because at least you can research how to be a better manager. You can research, why am I feeling this way? Why? Like, you can Google right now, how do I confront a bad employee? Guarantee you, Google it, David, Google it and see what comes up. Okay. And let's talk about that. But that to me is people use that as a scapegoat, is that they were not trained or they were not respected when they were kids to have a voice.
Yes. Oh, here's the definition.
Paying attention to wait. He just pulled up what's on Google when you put that in, how to confront a bad employee. Listen often, give clear behavioral feedback, document, be consistent, set consequences if things don't change, work through the company's processes, don't position whatever, manage your self-talk. So now that is something that you and I and Glenn would give advice to a young person or an older person on how to deal with that. And I think that is perfect. So if I'm sitting in my house, I can Google that and boom, I just found Anthony's brain. So I think social media is two ways. You just got to want to be a better person.
Yeah. I guess what I'm arguing with social media is it has exploded. It has made it like more. It is happening more and more and more. You know what I'm saying? Whereas prior to the social media and, I just use the example of myself when I was told by my manager, hey, Ryan, you need to document your employee. You need to coach and counsel them. And I'm like, what the hell does that mean? What does that mean? And I started freaking out. I'm like, but then they won't like me. That's literally what popped in my head. They're not going to like me anymore.
If you Googled it, it would have helped you.
Well, Google didn't exist back then. It was Ask Jeeves, I think it was.
That's my point. But my point is exactly my point. My point is there's good and bad. I like scotch. I have one scotch probably a week, maybe two, unless I'm on the poker table. I don't drink it every day, right? I was doing TikTok every night. I stopped doing it because it was not giving me. It was just wasting my time.
Yeah.
So social media is a scapegoat to people's self-discipline. And like we've been saying on the show, it's not about motivation, it's about self-discipline. And so social media is there to help you. If I have an iPhone and you don't, who's smarter? I am. Because in 3 seconds, David literally in 3 seconds gave us everything we needed to know. So I'm the smartest guy in the room because I have an iPhone. It's the way you use it. It's like anything else. It's the way you use your team. Like people say, you're using me like a tool. Well, guess what? You are a tool. So am I. I'm a tool for the owner. But make me feel good about being a tool. Give me money for being a tool. Pat me on the back and give me awards for being a tool. But we're all tools in this world. And that tool's not a bad word unless you use the tool in a bad way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
So speaking of social media, be sure to like all of our social media pages. Find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, all that kind of stuff. I'm just a few people away from being maxed out on friends, and that's what I need for to feel good about myself. But seriously, doctor, we were talking about that authenticity thing, right? And we all talk the talk, but as a boss, how do you know if you're actually espousing what you think you believe? How can we do a self-check on ourselves to actually create that right environment instead of just assuming that's already in place because we like ourselves and think we're cool?
Oh, man. But I would say, number one, when you wake up in the morning, look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, just like what Steve Jobs would do every time he woke up in the morning, is, do I love what I'm doing? Mm-hmm. Look at yourself in the mirror every day before you go into work or before you go into your home office or your dining room table and say, do I really, truly love what I am doing here today? Am I making a difference in the world? But I think listening is a very simple skill and in an art form that we forgot, that we don't listen like we used to. And I think what I mean by that is ask your employees. Ask your employees, how am I doing today? When you sit with them on your weekly one-on-ones, if you do one-on-ones, I highly encourage it. Ideally on a weekly basis, at a minimum twice a month, every other week. But sit down with them each week for 15 minutes in a one-on-one and check in with them. Look at their goals. Are they hitting their goals? What do you need from me? What do you need from the organization? And most importantly, your final question, what can I be doing to help you become more effective? What do you need from me? Is there anything that I can do to improve, to make your life better? At the end of the day, I am here to serve you. It's a very servant leadership approach, particularly in hospitality. I really do subscribe to that servant leadership mentality. We serve the employees so they can serve the guests, and the guests will keep coming back.
But Doc, I find in my career that the people that suck the most ask that question the most. How am I doing? And the person that sucks the most is not going to get a real answer. I think.
Why are we giving them the real answer?
You suck. You suck. I'm not going to tell you. You may fire me. The reason I'm not going to tell you is because you suck. So one of the things I really liked is these anonymous, as I got into the business, these anonymous reviews of people, because you have to deal with that. You're rated in Marriott or Hilton, whatever, based on what your employees think of you. I learned a lesson early on. I was at PS 254 in Brooklyn. I was maybe 16 years old, and we were playing pickup softball. And every day or every couple of days, we would play pickup softball. And so we had a little team. And I remember that I wanted to be the captain. And they did a little vote. And I remember turning to my friend and said, I'm winning this hands down. I'm going to win. I didn't get a single vote except the one I voted for myself. And at that moment, I realized, oh, I suck. I got to do better. And so that was a way that I really always made sure that little lesson. So Fred Lerner, if you're listening, I remember that moment when you won and I didn't, or I think Randy Pushkin won. I don't remember. But anyway, that little lesson taught me everything I needed to know. I remember another person at Nickelodeon. She was at the counter at the arcade, and I'm running around the hotel, and we're having a conversation. I'm sitting down having lunch with her, and I say, I just want to talk to you. We're talking. And she goes, can I be honest with you? And I said, of course you can be honest with me. She goes, you really think you have the pulse of this hotel under wraps, right? You know what's going on, don't you? I was like, yeah, I think so. She goes, you don't have a clue.
Right.
She goes,
That's crazy.
And she was making fun of me. She's
Right.
like, you have no idea what's going on in this hotel. So what I did was I broke down what that means for her and for me. So I said, do me a favor, go home and write down where don't you think I have a clue. And then I'm going to write down where I don't think I have a clue. And guess what? They matched.
Wow.
And you know what she meant? I didn't know what was going on with all the, what happens in a big hotel like that, right? All the personal, who hates who and who likes who and who. But so I don't know because I don't have time to care about if you like the lady at the front desk. I can care less. But did you feel so what I didn't know about were those things, and so we agreed to that I don't know. So then I wrote a list of, do you agree with that? I do know that our standard of service is an 8 and I want it to be a 9.5. Do you agree with that we were not as clean as we should have been? Now we are cleaner. And so and did your salary increase? And so we agreed on what we're, on the mission of the hotel, but no, so I at first got really self-conscious and really insecure. So if I would have walked away from that meeting, I would have been angry at myself or angry at her, as opposed to confront myself and say, okay, before I lose my crap over here with myself or her, let me understand what she means by that. It's just that her perception is from a line level employee and my perception is from trying to protect everyone. So anyway, I don't know if that means anything, but it was just, again, looking at myself and trying to improve.
Yeah, I think that's what we have to do constantly, is try to be honest with ourselves and get past that. And the more honest we are with ourselves, I think the better we'll be as managers or staff members. Doctor, we're starting to run out of time here. What do you want people to walk away with today?
Don't be a jackass. No. Be a good human. No,
I drop the mic and go home.
Yeah. Great seeing you guys. No, I at the end of the day, I think just to wrap it up, we talked a lot today about personal values, authenticity, listening to our employees and getting that feedback and trying to improve each and every day. I think that's what it really wraps up. I think accountability is key. And I think really understanding what makes people tick, what makes our employees tick, and why they do the things they do before we assume why they're doing what they do. In other words, just because their behavior is showing you something does not mean that is their intent. And I'm getting really deep here, but this goes back to the relationship awareness theory of, we feel good about ourselves when things are going well. That is the precipice of all of this is that's what we need to recognize as leaders, that just because someone is, again, their behavior is showing X does not mean that's their intent. And us asking why they're doing what they do before we assume or immediately jump to termination and immediately jump to a coaching counseling session that gets documented in their file. Let's find out what makes them tick and why they do what they do. And we do that by mentoring through, I believe, weekly one-on-ones, right? And checking in with our employees on a regular basis and getting that feedback from them and giving them the tools and supplies that they need to do their jobs effectively, I think is what is going to make that culture at your hotels and restaurants that much better.
And I think for me, when you tell me, if I was sitting down and you said, well, doing one-on-one check-ins every day or every once a week, to me is a daunting task. And what I think you mean, and what I do is I make sure that every single employee in my hotel, at least once a week, I bump into them in the hallway. And that is a check-in. Not a formal, I have to put it on my calendar 15 minutes and we have to talk, because nobody wants to do that. It's a bumping in the elevator. It's a bumping in the hallway. Say, hey, man, what's up? How you doing? Last week I saw you not looking so good. You look much happier today. What's going on? How are you? And then that may motivate a 20-minute conversation in the office that you wanted to let them just talk. But that walking around management, if you learn nothing else, if you never go to school, if you you didn't even graduate high school, and somehow you find yourself in a management position, you do walk away round management, and you learn more than you can ever learn from your PhD or from your master's or from school. And when you see successful business people who are very wealthy and very successful, but they didn't graduate high school or they didn't go to college and have a formal education, I will guarantee you they don't know what their desk chair looks like.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's so funny that you mentioned that. Just real quick, I posted on my Instagram this morning this quote from my head here from books, but leaders can't lead with their feet on the desk. MBWA, manage by walking around. That was my thought for this morning at 6 a.m. You got to get out of your office, get your feet off that desk, get out and see what your people are doing. And Anthony, yes, you don't have to have a scheduled meeting every single week. The fact that you're out managing by walking around in the elevator, going on the floors, checking in with the housekeeper, asking how her family's doing, etc., that is doing a check-in. And if they want to volunteer extra information and make an appointment with you, trust me, they will.
You know what? I learned the two best examples from the two worst managers I've ever worked with, period. They're the worst leaders in the history of the hospitality industry, in my opinion. And I learned the greatest lessons. One would get up at 6 a.m. and walk the property and go to every single department. Now, he terrorized everybody, but I did it in a way of just checking in with everyone. So that, number one. And number two, somebody said to me, everybody's a boss watcher. And then he proved it right when one day he didn't help us valet park 1,000 cars and we had lines all the way up to 11th Avenue in Midtown. And I was like, oh shit, that's right. Everybody is a boss watcher and you suck. And so those two lessons are the best lessons I've ever learned from the two worst managers I've ever had.
Yeah.
All right, so we got one more question, Doctor, before we let you go. Let's bring that question up. What's the one thing that can help us find the right hospitality employee? Where would you look for him in today's environment?
Well, if you can safely get on an airplane with this candidate and put on your masks and be able to tolerate a flight with them from California to New York for the entire 5-6 hours, that's the person you want to hire.
Okay, you know what? I'm gonna challenge you one more time because I love you and I think everything you said I agree with, but there's a nuance to that. I would say 50% of the people on my A teams, I would not want to have a drink with, and 50% of the people I would want to have a drink with, but I like them all. And so to me, what I like is I like people that irritate me sometimes. That are so. I'll give you a perfect example. I gave someone a book once, a chef of this book, and actually I do like him, and I would spend time with him. But I gave him a book at the Algonquin Hotel. It was from the Frank Case, the original general manager, and I said, "Hey, there's only 2 books in existence from 1907 that Frank Case wrote, a cookbook, and this is one of them. And feel free to bring all of these menu items back." But just lighten them up for today's palate. He started to get so emotional and almost cry. He goes, "I'm allowed to do that?" I said, "Of course." And he was a pretty big chef. I mean, a pretty big background. He goes, "You're going to let me go back and create these menu items?" Of course. What do you mean allowed? We work on this together. He was so excited by that, but he was so annoying because after for doing it for so long, that's all he talked about. And the more he annoyed me, the more I wanted to be annoyed because his passion was unleashed. It was unleashed.
Yeah.
So those are the people, when you have, like you said just now, actually, when you said it, I wrote it about passion. I wrote it and texted it to my daughter. And when you have people that are annoying, that means there's 2 things. One, they have nothing else to do, or they're so built in. I have a friend that I work out with all the time. He is so built into breathing and to doing it right that sometimes it's a little obsessive, and I love it. But you have to want to love creative, passionate people. And if you don't, or if you're offended by them, you shouldn't be around them.
Yep. Yeah, I think just to honestly answer John's answer is, or his question, excuse me. I personally would be looking for someone who is willing to take ownership, accountability, and have that authenticity. Just kind of wrap up of what we were saying, and really understand what their core values are, and seek that alignment within my organization, and that they're going to help us move our mission forward. Because, like you said, Anthony, earlier, the mission is bigger than any of us. Okay, it's not just about making a quick buck for our ownership group and for our stakeholders. That's clearly very important. Otherwise, why are we in business? But I think also there's this at the core of it for all hoteliers out there, at the core of what we do is this passion of wanting to serve others, something that is bigger than us, to create this experience, to create memories, to create a lifelong experience that gets us excited and brings in all the good feelings. That's the person I need. That's the person I need. And the person that is going to do that is someone who not only has that servant leadership approach and the passion for it, but someone who can truly hold others, including themselves, accountable and recognize that the mission comes first, not my own self-interest.
Yeah, and I think holding yourself accountable is more important than anything else. And we talk about, management by walking around. So now you have an excuse to not manage by walking around because nobody's walking around. So manage by calling around.
Yep.
Call your employees. Manage by calling around, texting around, Zooming around. But there's so many ways. If you're like, everybody's in their own head right now and everybody's lonely, I just saw Glenn yesterday and David, the producer, and I was like, I needed to see them. I was getting a little lonely. Yeah, I see my family, but it's like good to see people, really, like we had a nice breakfast. That's why I wish for breakfast so much. I just wanted to get back into the routine of us having breakfast at the Garden City Hotel when we do our podcast.
Yeah, right.
And the feeling I got from that breakfast every day. So since we can't do that, you have to Zoom, you have to text, you have to call. It's not an excuse to ignore people's feelings because everybody is either lonely, and I don't mean lonely because a lot of people aren't lonely because their whole family's home, but lonely for what makes them feel good, and that's their colleagues and their work environment. So, manage by calling around.
Yeah. Yeah. Or Zooming around in some cases.
Well, speaking of Zooming, apparently Aretha Franklin had a song in 1985 called "Who's Zooming Who?" Just so everybody knows about that. She's way ahead of our time.
We actually used Aretha Franklin's "Respect" for my movie. It was my favorite scene in the whole movie. Yeah, Wise Gal. But it was my favorite song ever. Anyway, go ahead.
All right, so Doctor, final thoughts. Shameless plug for you. How can we find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram, dr.giffen, dr.giffen. On Instagram, I post a motivational quote there each morning to help management and leadership. So that's one way. Or you can visit my website, innospire.com, Innospire, INOSPIRE.com. So I have some great blogs up there. I got my own podcast as well, the MOD Report, which focuses on all things hospitality, human resources related. So there's my information there on the scrolly bar right below. So
beautiful. Thank you for using the official word for it, scrolly bar. So you rock.
The scrolly bar.
I love it, man. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate you.
I appreciate both of you, what you do with your podcast and all the information you deliver to the industry. So I truly, truly had fun. And thank you again for having me.
Thank you, Doc.
Thank you so much. And be sure to subscribe to his podcast. And while you guys are out there subscribing to podcasts, check the audio versions of No Vacancy Live. You can find that on the No Vacancy podcast feed. And of course, the Checking In with Anthony and Glenn feed as well. We know you're out there walking the dog, you're exercising. Why not take us along with you? Anthony, another good show today. Really enjoyed hearing what he had to say. We're mixing things up a little bit with human resources.
Yeah, absolutely. And I absolutely enjoyed it. And again, being authentic and being who I am, I couldn't talk to him unless I knew he had operations experience. Because if he didn't have operations experience, dude, it would have been your show and I would have sat there and said nothing. Thank you for allowing me to take over the show a little bit today. But since he had operations experience, then I can talk to him. But if he was and he's in theory, I'm like, yeah, I'm done. I can't talk to you.
So a little thing about going behind the scenes here. Anthony definitely led the conversation today, but I'm always got mixed feelings about that. Do I want to jump in and talk? But you're geeking out so much. I don't want to step on your toes because you make so many great points. So that's why I love having this conversation.
Today, I would have put in the private chat, shut the up.
No, I'm just like, dude, I have a question. Please let me ask a question.
so my friend Peter Pockets over there, he posted, you look younger today. Thank you, Peter. I appreciate that. And congratulations on, what you're doing and focused on your health. And I hope everything works out. And also, you said you posted, I like breakfast. I know you like breakfast. And how many times have I texted you? And not once you say, hey, let's go to breakfast. So invitation, we'll go to the hotel. the new hotel in our neighborhood, and we'll have breakfast, my friend. And hope you and your family are well. And I miss you. And be well, Dave. Nice to know that there are people that remember the '80s who zoom in. Who?
Yeah, I still live my life in the '80s, and I should mention that I'm in the market right now for a Save Ferris T-shirt because I think that would be a perfect addition to me. All right, Anthony, very important question that we got up here. When is Chris on again? He'll be back on Thursday. The last 2 weeks he's been doing running company CEO kind of stuff, so we're glad that he'll be back on Thursday.
But yeah, so he was only on the show when he had time. We're not allowed to play that.
All right, no, don't take it off. Take it off. We're gonna get in trouble.
If we play that, David, we'll get taken down. So, what the hell was I saying before he did that?
Why Chris has
Chris, yeah. So Chris Green, yes, David, we will. He just tried it. We will 1,000%. It's a copyright infringement. We can't play that music. So, Chris Green was lonely apparently, and just came on every twice a week because he was lonely. Now he's a busy guy; he can't find time for us. So I say, let's vote somebody else in. You know who my vote is, or at least once a week. Who's my vote?
Christy.
Yes.
All right. We don't want to play any favorites here. We love all of you, management.
Yes, we do. We like Chris better than you, Chris. No, I'm just kidding.
Right. All right. So, all right, guys.
We changed or Kimberly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So, everybody, thank you so much for being here today. Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter. Text the word hotel to 66866. Like us on Facebook. Remember, we already had a good conversation about that. I need to feel good about myself, and the only way I could do that is by getting as many likes as possible. So please go ahead and do that. And Anthony, Thursday, the triumphant return
of
Hospitality Success.
Of Hospitality Success, 3:00 Facebook Live. Go to Hospitality Success. We go behind the scenes of Hotel Impossible and show you what's in this little crazy mind of mine and why I made decisions. Actually, Jeremy, who breaks down the show with Mike, our producer, on that show, and her fiance, who's getting married December 19th, if I haven't told you already. I'm really excited for them. Mm-hmm. And she said it was the Sturgis episode. And she called me up. She goes, I laughed for an hour straight. I was like, that show it wasn't that funny. And then I thought back of all the scenes that we're going to go over. I was like, oh, it was really funny. But I've forgotten about that. But, one of the things we talk about walk around management, we talk about discipline, we talk about leadership, we talk about all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Whether you work for Marriott, whether you work for Kimpton, you work for yourself, period, end of story. And everything you do or don't do has consequences. Every decision has a consequence. Again, we talked about lighting. The consequences, people are like, Anthony doesn't have a professional studio, doesn't have lighting. I don't. And if that's a consequence of you not listening to the show, okay. I have to make decisions in my life. Uh-huh. And my brand is only controlled by me, even if I work for a Marriott, IBM, or whoever. And I think that we have gotten away from that thinking. Your personal brand is not for sale until you sell it. So if you work for someone and you can't bring your personal brand to that hotel or to that company, they're not buying you. They're buying what they want you to be. Mm-hmm. Okay, if you can bring your personal brand and they're allowing you to be your personal brand and be who you are within the confines of their values, then they're buying your brand.
That's right.
And too often we forget that. And again, we go back to making decisions to leave a company or to push a boss that's a little bit negative or you don't feel comfortable with is scary. Mm-hmm. But what's scarier is to be on your deathbed and have regrets. There's nothing scarier than a regret.
That's right.
So if that person fires you because you articulated your concern, then I guarantee you're going to enjoy that being fired 6 weeks later because you're going to say, why did I give that guy so much of, or that girl so much of my time when I could have been happier and freer? So until you understand the power of your personal brand, you can never truly be free.
Right. I love that. And that's probably a good place to leave things for today. Also, be sure you check out novacancynews.com. I'm doing multiple reports a week through No Vacancy News Today. It's your great source for breaking news in the hospitality industry with some unique analysis behind it. Anthony, tomorrow we're at Big Snow. I'm very excited to go to this indoor ski slope.
I am, and now I'm getting a little anxious because I got to get my ski gear. Although, you know what, they have all the ski gear. They have the ski pants. Maybe I'll use that so I'm all big snowed up, so I don't use my own. Maybe I'll do that. That's a good idea.
All right, let's big snow it up. I'm gonna go tomorrow also check out the Nickelodeon amusement park. Maybe hit a roller coaster or two. That should be a lot of fun. We'll see you guys tomorrow. So remember, after today's show, you know better than anyone, you've only got one life. So blaze on, but